Hey everyone, welcome back. This is one of a series of videos looking at key institutions and concepts in American politics. In this video, we're going to explore the system of federalism characteristic of the U.S. structure of government. Remember back to the debate over ratification of the U.S. Constitution. At the time, one of the primary points of contention between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, or between those who supported the new Constitution and those who opposed it, was over the relative distribution of power between the national government and the states. Under the Articles of Confederation, power rested primarily with the state governments. The national government had only those powers granted to it by the states. This was the defining feature of a confederal system. But in the eyes of the Federalists, that system proved too weak to respond to the crises of the day. By contrast, the British government against which the revolution had been fought was a unitary system in which all power is concentrated at the national or central level of government, and these subnational governments have only those powers delegated to them by the center. Both the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists rejected that system, fearing tyranny from a government with too much power. The division of power under a federal system was viewed as a compromise between the two alternatives. In a federal system, sovereign power is divided between the various layers of government, each of which is directly responsible to the people. As a result, while the relative balance of power between the state and national governments may shift back and forth over time, there are constitutional limits and protections afforded each layer of government, preventing either from dominating the other. Under a federal system, both the national and state governments have independent authority. They are each responsible to the people, and they're forced to cooperate or share power in many areas. The United States is one of about 25 countries worldwide that practices federalism. Other federal states include India, Brazil, Germany, Nigeria, Mexico, Canada, Russia, and Belgium. Federalism tends to be more common in more populous countries and more diverse countries, as it permits greater subsidiarity. That is, the idea that governments or decisions should be made as close to the people as possible, that is, at the lowest level of government. It also permits greater regional and local autonomy, assuring that diverse populations can establish governments that meet their specific needs. But, as we've just alluded, this is hardly the only way of organizing political power in a country. In a unitary system, all political power flows from the center or the nation-state. Voters delegate authority to the national government, which then makes binding decisions for the entire country. Where local governments exist, they're only able to exercise those powers explicitly granted to them by the national government, as the national government can override any decisions or they make or revoke their powers. Unitary systems are the most common form of political organization in the world today. Indeed, about 85% of all countries in the world today have unitary systems. Examples include Japan, France, the United Kingdom, South Korea, Israel, New Zealand, and many, many others. Unitary systems tend to function best in smaller, less populous countries and in countries with less diverse populations. And they tend to have more centralized political systems and more centralized political power. Most state governments in the United States operate according to unitary systems, where local or county and municipal governments have only those powers explicitly granted to them by the state governments. There have also been examples of confederal systems, where the national government exercises only those powers granted to it by the subnational or state governments. Historically, the United States under the Articles of Confederation prior to the adoption of the current Constitution in 1789 operated in this way. The power of the national government was extremely limited, and most political authority rested with the states. A case can be made that the European Union operates in this way today. In such a system, political authority is highly decentralized. We can identify three basic principles of federalism, requirements to be considered a federal system. First, in a federal system, the national and subnational governments must be independently elected and directly responsible to the people. Second, the Constitution must establish the political independence of each level, guaranteeing the sovereignty of each and dividing responsibilities for governance between them. And finally, federal systems must have some way to represent the regional or subnational preferences within the national political institutions. Most frequently, this is accomplished through the legislature, where a second chamber is usually structured to provide representation for the subnational units. In both Germany and the United States, for example, the upper chamber of the legislature requires representation or provides for representation of the subnational governments. This is a common feature in federal systems. We can see how federalism divides power across the various layers of government in the United States by considering some of the specific powers afforded the national or federal government and the powers afforded the states. Under the Constitution, the federal government has 3 types of powers, which we'll examine in a bit more detail in just a few minutes. But these powers include the power to regulate foreign trade and trade between the states, the power to coin money or declare war, and to conduct foreign relations. The states similarly have powers granted to them by the Constitution. These are sometimes referred to as the reserved powers and include the power to regulate intrastate commerce or commerce within the state, to establish local governments at the county, city, or other levels, to administer elections, and police powers to protect public health, welfare, and morality. But there's a third category of powers, sometimes referred to as concurrent powers. These include the power to levy taxes or borrow money, establish courts, and to enact and enforce laws. We explore the sources and limits of these powers in another video. But why would a country choose one system over another? What are the advantages and disadvantages of federalism? Let's start with the advantages. First, federalism can encourage policy experimentation and innovation. Federalism enables states to serve, in the words of Associate Justice Louis Brandeis, as laboratories of democracy, where they can develop and implement innovative policies tailored to their unique needs and circumstances. Successful policies in one state can be adopted by others or even inspire national legislation, while failed policies are ideally recognized and confined to one state. This flexibility allows for more adaptive and responsive systems of governance. Federalism is also well suited for diverse political systems. Indeed, most federal systems around the world are relatively large geographically and relatively diverse in terms of population. Federalism allows for local political systems to vary across the country, permitting them to cater to local conditions, concerns, and preferences. And finally, federalism also helps ensure a balance of power between the federal and state governments by preventing the concentration of power in a single governing body and by distributing authority between the federal and state governments. This division of power helps protect against political tyranny and encourages collaboration between different levels of government to address the nation's diverse needs. However, federalism can also suffer from some disadvantages. It can potentially create inequality among the states, creating or exacerbating disparities among states in terms of resources, policies, or outcomes. Differences in state tax systems, regulatory environments, and social policies can result in varying levels of public services such as education and healthcare. These disparities can lead to regional inequalities and limit the mobility or opportunities available to residents of certain states. Further, federalism can create confusion or inefficiencies in policy implementation. The division of power between the federal and state governments can sometimes lead to confusion and conflict over policy implementation. Overlapping or conflicting jurisdictions can create bureaucratic hurdles and inefficiencies, hindering the effectiveness of government programs. Additionally, the varying levels of government can make it difficult for citizens to know which entity is entirely responsible for addressing a particular issue, complicating the process of holding elected officials accountable for their actions. But that's it for now. Please leave any questions you have in the comments section below, and thanks for watching.